Let's begin. Noah Carrington's house was always quiet, but that night the silence pressed harder against the walls. The air felt different. Not colder, not warmer, just hollow. He stood in the hallway, watching his wife from a distance. Isla, the woman he'd promised forever to. She wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary, just folding laundry on their shared bed, but the detachment in her fingers, the robotic rhythm of her hands, it pierced something inside him. She didn't hum anymore. She hadn't laughed at his terrible jokes in months. They hadn't kissed, really kissed, since New Year's Eve, and even then, it had felt like a polite ritual. He didn't interrupt her. Instead, he leaned against the doorway of the study, sipping lukewarm coffee, letting the bitterness sting his throat as if punishment was deserved simply for suspecting what he already knew. The truth had been building quietly, like dust settling on unused shelves. Unspoken, uninvited, and yet inevitable. That evening, Isla turned to him with a strange stillness in her eyes. "We need to talk," she said. He didn't sit. He didn't even blink. "About Daniel?" She faltered. Just a flicker. But he caught it. Her lips parted, then closed, then opened again. "It's not what you think." "Then tell me," he said. "Tell me what I'm thinking." She inhaled sharply, as if trying to summon a version of herself that still believed she could lie convincingly. "It's not physical." Noah's laugh was hollow, humorless. "That's supposed to make it better?" "It's emotional," she said. "And it's confusing. I didn't mean for it to happen." "You never do," he replied calmly. She bristled. "Don't mock me. I'm not. I'm just tired. So tell me, what now? Do you want to leave?" She shook her head too quickly. "No, I just need space. Time. To think." "To think," he repeated, while keeping her options open. Isla didn't answer. She stood there, small in the doorway, like a ghost unsure which room to haunt. Noah nodded and stepped aside, granting her passage, not just from the hallway, but from the life they had built together. That night, she slept in the guest room. The next morning, she left with a suitcase that looked far too light for someone who claimed to be returning. Noah didn't stop her. He didn't scream. He didn't beg. He simply sat at the kitchen counter, eyes locked on the clock, counting every second not as a countdown, but as a rebirth. What Isla didn't know was that Noah had seen her messages weeks ago, the one she thought she deleted, the flirty late-night chats with Daniel, the co-worker she once claimed was just a buddy with a bad sense of humor. Noah remembered him. Too clean, too charming, too present. He had watched it all unravel like a spectator in his own marriage, paralyzed by disbelief, curious to see how far she'd go. And now he had his answer. Noah didn't fall apart. He got organized. The first thing he did was call Alara. Not a rebound, not a therapist, a lawyer. And not just any lawyer, but one who specialized in quiet exits and ironclad revenge. By the time Isla texted that she needed time, Noah had already closed their joint account, redirected the utilities, and secured the deed to the house solely in his name. Thanks to a prenup she forgot existed, written in her early starry-eyed days when love felt eternal, and Noah's family wealth made him cautious. She had no idea, while she was discovering Daniel's shortcomings, his mood swings, his selfishness, his lack of depth, Noah was building a new version of his life, one where he wouldn't be a placeholder for someone else's uncertainty. She thought he'd wait. She thought wrong. What she didn't know, he wasn't preparing for her return. He was preparing for the day she realized she no longer had a home to come back to. By the third week of her absence, Noah had already scrubbed her name from every legal document, like erasing pencil lines from a page. He changed the locks, not as a symbol of hatred, but as a boundary, one she had already crossed emotionally. The lawyer, Alara, moved swiftly. She was a woman of exacting intelligence, the kind whose voice never rose, but every word she spoke felt like a scalpel. Precise, lethal, empowering. "She doesn't get to decide when this ends," she told him, sliding the final draft of the divorce settlement across her mahogany desk. "You do." Noah signed it without flinching. He didn't grieve the woman Isla used to be. That version had vanished long before Daniel entered the picture. What he mourned was the illusion, the quiet mornings, the inside jokes, the shared groceries, the way she used to say his name like it mattered. He let go of it all like unclenching a fist that had held nothing but thorns. And as for Daniel, oh, no, I had plans. Because while Isla played at romantic escapism, Noah had been mapping out every digital breadcrumb they'd dropped. He wasn't out for public shaming. No messy Facebook exposés or leaked screenshots. No, his revenge would be silent, strategic, and poetic. He waited. Because the best vengeance isn't reactive. It's patient. Then, on a Monday, Isla called. Not a text. A call. Noah saw her name flash across the screen and answered. Not because he wanted to, but because it was time. Hey, she said softly, her voice coated in uncertainty. Are you okay? I'm doing great. Noah replied smoothly. You? She hesitated. I'm not sure. Silence stretched. Daniel and I. We're not really talking. Noah didn't respond. He's not who I thought he was, she admitted. There it was. The unraveling. She tried again. Can we meet? Noah didn't say yes. He gave her a time and place. Midday. A public cafe they both used to love, but one that now felt sterile to him. She arrived 5 minutes early. Nervous. That forest green coat draped around her shoulders like armor. Her eyes darted the room like a thief returning to a house she once looted. Noah didn't smile. He nodded. They sat. Ordered coffee. She fidgeted. You look different, she said. Better or worse? He asked. She smiled faintly. Stronger. I am. The conversation was mundane at first. Polite. Forgettable. Then she leaned forward, voice trembling. I made a mistake. He sipped his coffee. Which one? She winced. I shouldn't have left. Daniel. He doesn't understand me. He's cold. Distant. I thought it was you who made me feel small. But it wasn't. Noah's jaw flexed. You were looking for a fantasy, not a person. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. I want to fix this. You're late, he said flatly. I know, but I'm here. You left to find clarity. Did you find it? She nodded. Yes. I found out that I ruined the only thing that ever felt real. Noah placed a neatly bound folder on the table and pushed it across to her. What's this? Divorce papers. Everything's finalized. I just need your signature. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. You already had this ready. I had it ready the day after you left. She opened it. Read the header. Her lips quivered. You're serious. I'm not angry, Isla, he said. But I'm done. She whispered. You don't want to even try? I did, he said. While you were falling into someone else's arms. I was figuring out how to heal without becoming bitter. She was silent. He stood, threw some cash on the table for both drinks, and looked down at her one last time. Good luck, Isla. Then he left. But it wasn't over yet. Noah's true revenge wasn't a clean break. It was what came next. Because he knew something Isla didn't. Daniel was married, with children, and Noah had just scheduled a private meeting with Daniel's wife. Daniel's wife's name was Savannah Hale, and when she stepped into the boutique conference room of Alara's office, Noah saw immediately why Isla had been drawn to Daniel. Savannah was radiant, not in an ostentatious way, but with the quiet dignity of someone who had learned to walk through fire and smile without letting the smoke choke her. She didn't look surprised when Noah introduced himself. I've read the name, she said softly. Seen it in the emails, in the texts he forgot to delete. Her hands were steady, her voice not bitter, just tired. And in that moment, Noah saw not an ally in revenge, but a woman who'd been pushed to her limit with a familiar kind of betrayal. I'm not here to humiliate you, he said. Or him. But I thought you had a right to know that it wasn't just flirting. Savannah nodded once. I figure as much. The pattern fits. Together, they walked through receipts, digital and emotional. Dates, meetings, hotel records, deleted voicemails recovered from a phone backup Noah had access to from his brief stint in IT. Nothing illegal, just careful, precise. Savannah leaned back, eyes wet but unshed. So what now? Do we destroy them? Noah took a breath. No, we free ourselves, but we make sure they understand what they lost. That was the beginning of Noah's next act. Not public, not cruel, but unforgettable. First, he filed a formal complaint at the marketing firm where Daniel and Isla had met, anonymously, but with receipts attached. Inappropriate conduct. Office affairs breaching the company's ethical guidelines. HR took it seriously. Daniel was suspended by the following week. Isla, though not officially reprimanded, was placed under internal review. The second act was quieter, but more elegant. Noah hosted a photography exhibit, his passion project, long buried under spreadsheets and domestic duties. He'd poured his soul into it during the late hours when the pain kept him from sleep. Every photo spoke of solitude, growth, betrayal, and silent resilience. The centerpiece, a haunting silhouette titled The Vacancy, capturing a woman mid-turn, half fading into shadows. It was art, but it was also Isla. The moment she saw it, she would know. The exhibit went viral, shared among art communities online, picked up by 2 blogs, and even featured in a local culture magazine. Noah wasn't just rebuilding. He was thriving. When Isla saw the article featuring him, smiling in front of a crowd, camera in hand, no trace of pain left, she sent him a message. "You look like you found peace. I'm happy for you. Truly." Noah didn't reply. He didn't need to, because his silence now meant more than all the words he could ever say. But what he didn't expect was the letter. It arrived 3 weeks later. Handwritten. No return address. Just the familiar loops of her handwriting on the envelope. Inside, Isla had poured out a confession. Not to beg, not to guilt trip, but to understand. She detailed how it all began. The long work hours, the loneliness, how Daniel had made her feel seen. But it wasn't real. She now realized he had mirrored what she wanted to hear, not what she needed to grow. She ended it with, "You were never the problem. I was just too afraid of my own reflection in your love." Noah didn't burn the letter. He didn't reply either. Instead, he stored it in a box marked closed chapters. Because that was all it was now, a memory. But fate wasn't done crossing their paths. Not yet. It had been 4 months since Noah had last seen Isla face to face, and 2 since he'd received her letter. In that time, Noah had grown into a life that no longer resembled the one he shared with her. His days were filled with gallery consultations, travel inquiries, photo shoots, and late-night editing marathons. But there was something else, someone else, who had stepped into his orbit with an ease that made him believe in quiet beginnings. Her name was Claire Monroe, a painter with a laugh that didn't beg to be understood and a gaze that didn't try to solve him. They met at the closing reception of his gallery. She had been invited by the curator and stayed for his work. They talked about art, the absence of noise and city sunsets, and the gentle destruction of starting over. She didn't pry into his past, and he didn't offer it. It was slow, beautifully so. But as Noah moved forward, Isla drifted backward. Word had gotten around. Daniel was fired, quietly but definitively. HR found enough to warrant termination under personal misconduct. Savannah, meanwhile, had filed for divorce with the help of Alara. But Savannah didn't just walk away. She started a blog. Anonymous at first. The Ledger of Lies, it was called. An emotional unpacking of betrayal, healing, motherhood, and the brutal clarity of silence. She never named names, never even hinted at her husband's identity. But her words carved truths that echoed loudly in the minds of those who read them. It gained traction, and Isla read every word. Though Savannah didn't know it, she had become the mirror Isla had avoided for years. The blog exposed not the act of infidelity, but the why, the hollow reasons, the self-deceit, the emotional cowardice of wanting more without earning it. Isla was unraveling, not from guilt, but from the slow realization that she had gambled everything on a lie and still lost. She tried to reconnect, sent Noah messages again, some subtle, others direct. He left them unread. Claire had noticed once, during a dinner date. "You don't have to hide it," she said gently. "I'm not hiding it," Noah replied. "I'm ignoring it." Claire smiled. Not possessive, just warm. "You're allowed to have a past, as long as you're not still living there." Noah knew then. He wasn't. He was finally out of it. But one evening, stormy and strange, he came home to find Isla standing at the edge of his driveway. No coat, no umbrella, just drenched in desperation. He got out of his car and met her halfway, rain slipping between them like a curtain. "I'm not here to ruin anything," she said, breathless. I needed you to know." "To know what?" "That I get it now. All of it. The way I looked for attention instead of intimacy. The way I mistook emptiness for freedom. I know I lost you, Noah. I don't expect anything." He said nothing. "I saw your exhibit," she added. "The photo of the woman turning away. That was me, wasn't it?" He paused, then nodded once. It was. Her tears blended with the rain. "I'm sorry. I know, he replied. But forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. She looked at the house, warm lights spilling from the windows. A silhouette moved inside. Claire, I hope she's good to you, Isla whispered. She is, he said simply. Because I finally know what good looks like. She smiled then, not with hope, but with surrender. I needed to see it for myself. And with that, Isla walked back into the night. No drama, no pleadings, just acceptance. Inside, Claire had made tea. Friend of yours? She asked as he entered. Ghost, he said, shaking off his jacket. Claire raised an eyebrow, but didn't press. Instead, she handed him the mug. Then here's to exorcisms. They clinked ceramic. And somewhere miles away, Savannah posted her final blog entry. Some stories don't end with justice. Some end with peace. And that's more than enough. The first time Noah laughed from his gut again, it wasn't a punchline or a joke. It was because Claire tripped over his camera bag and accidentally knocked a glass of red wine all over his clean white shirt. She froze in horror. He burst out laughing. It was so unforced, so startling, that it echoed in his ribs like wind in an old house, finally learning how to breathe again. They'd been together nearly 7 months by then. Not officially labeled, not obsessively defined. Just there, steady, present. Claire never once asked him about Isla. She never picked at his scars or tiptoed around his silences. She understood something most people didn't. The loudest parts of grief weren't the sobs. It was the stillness after. And Noah, he began to photograph again. Not for galleries, not for likes, but for himself. Rain on rusted metal. The softness of morning fog. The way Claire bit her lip when she painted. He was falling in love. Not like before, not blindly, not endlessly, but intentionally. And that was the difference. Meanwhile, Isla had moved to a smaller city up north. She got a job at a nonprofit for youth education. She sold her designer handbags, bought secondhand furniture, and rented a small apartment with creaky floors and paper-thin walls. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. She started journaling again, attended a weekly support group, not just for infidelity recovery, but for people who'd sabotaged their own lives and were trying to rebuild. For the first time, Isla wasn't the victim or the villain. She was just someone trying. Once, she came across Savannah in a bookstore. They didn't speak. Savannah just nodded, civil, distant. But Isla caught the glance, a flicker of recognition, maybe even grace. Not forgiveness, not friendship, just acknowledgement. And it was enough. Savannah had blossomed too. Her blog, The Ledger of Lies, had grown into a podcast. She became a quiet icon in the healing community. Interviews, panels, features. But she never cashed in on revenge. Never name-dropped. Never once said her ex's name. She spoke of boundaries, of silence, of walking away without slamming the door. And listeners loved her for it. One afternoon, Noah stumbled on her podcast. Claire had it playing in the background while she painted. He froze. Not because he was triggered, but because he wasn't. Savannah was speaking about second chances. Not the kind that asked for people to come back, but the kind you gave yourself when you finally stopped clinging to the people who left. He looked over at Claire, barefoot, humming under her breath, a paint smudge across her nose. He walked over, kissed her shoulder, and said, "Let's take a trip." They booked a cabin in the mountains. No phones, no internet, just two people with a camera, some paintbrushes, and the space to grow something beautiful without noise. On the final night, as the wind whispered through the pine trees, Claire looked at him across the campfire. "Do you ever think about her?" she asked. Noah didn't lie. "Sometimes. Not like before." "Do you miss her?" He thought for a long moment, then shook his head. "I miss who I thought she was. But the person I've become, I wouldn't have found him if she hadn't left." Claire smiled. "Then maybe she did one thing right." He chuckled. "Yeah, maybe she did." They sat in silence, flames crackling. Somewhere, in another version of their life, Isla stood alone on a balcony, holding a mug of tea. Her hands were warmer than they had been in months. She wasn't healed, but she was healing, and that mattered more. Because revenge hadn't been loud. It had been quiet, patient, steady, the kind that didn't burn down bridges, but built new ones somewhere far, far away, where Noah no longer needed to be chosen. He had chosen himself. And finally, that was enough.